there's what I call a whole interesting Jewish PTSD subtext to the raging sea. In Psalm 74, verses 12, we read, God, you have been our king for a long time. You have saved us many times on this earth. With your great power, you split open the sea, broke the heads of the sea monster. Yes, you smashed the heads of Leviathan and left his body for animals to eat. Verse 15, you make the springs and rivers flow, and you make the rivers dry up. Now, what's going on here? God is exerting his control over creation, right, in this passage. He exerts his control especially, in particularly, over the seas. This appears a lot in the Old Testament. So we have Proverbs 8, Job 38. And we know that God used water, the raging sea, right, to destroy the Nephilim, the giants. Now, I think most of us here in this room agree that the Nephilim, or what the LXX, the Greek translation, calls the giants, were not human. There was some kind of mix between fallen angels and women. So God used the raging sea to do that. He flooded the earth, right? There's an interesting thing here, and this is where the PTSD comes in. The Jews know this very well. The sea to them presented a lot of unknowns. So they have this flood story. They're very scared of the sea. According to the book of Psalms and Job, the giants survived the flood. Now I'll tell you why. In Job 26, verse 5, we have an interesting verse here. It says the Rephaim are formed beneath the waters. And in the books of Enoch, which are not in the canon, so if you're a Catholic, you're probably familiar with what I'm about to show you, but in those book of Enoch, they talk about the dead giants who live on as evil spirits. And well, not only me, but research has been made on this, on the Hebrew, the words and all this stuff, the word origins, and they are probably the Rephaim, these evil spirits. So we did a teaching here some time ago where I presented you a lot of information which certainly convinced me that the Nephilim or the giants survived. In other words, they were destroyed. Their physical form was destroyed. But I believe the Old Testament and other apocryphal works like Enoch provide more than enough evidence to show me and show many scholars that the Rephaim, the dead or evil spirits in your translations, it also appears as shades. I believe they are these dead giants, dead Nephilim, that God, I guess, because it's such a wicked thing they did, is keeping in this disembodied shape, this embodied form, to roam the desert lands, as Isaiah says in other places, and to suffer more until the day of judgment. The sea also presents for the Jewish mind, like I said, the unknown. So we have these sea monsters. So we just read one in Psalm 74. And then we get another one here called Rahab. Now Rahab, the word has two meanings. It's nation of Egypt in some context. But here I believe it's in connection with the sea monsters. So that's Rahab, you have Leviathan, and you have the famous Jonah fish story. It wasn't a whale, by the way. So the point here is that the raging seas are symbolic. They personify, they embody for the Jewish mind the chaotic world. Remember, if you read your Genesis, if you read the creation story, it wasn't ex nihilo, as we say. In other words, God did not create out of nothing. There was something. That's how the biblical account of the origin of life, let's say, begins. There was something. What was there? Well, it says there were chaotic waters, remember? It was dark and formless, but there was a lot of water. There was so much water that there was no land. So if you read carefully the account, it says that God dried up parts of what became this world. We got what we call land. So it represents that, if you will, primordial, chaotic, unformed creation for the Jews. So that's why they're very sensitive of the sea. So the evil sea. So in the New Testament, it's interesting what Jesus does. There are two very popular stories, if you remember, about Jesus and water. What are they? Well, one is where he's controlling the water. So he's doing God things, right? And remember I said, who is this guy? Even the wind, the waters. So he's controlling chaos itself. Who is this? And then obviously he walks on water. I think these are symbolic. I mean, I believe they happen, don't get me wrong. But they also have a deeper meaning of the Messiah, who is God's agent, controlling creation itself. And we will go on to read in this psalm how that is true for King David, who is obviously the father in a spiritual sense. That Jesus is the descendant of David. But it's all about control. That's the point. That God has control over these waters that represent that time before the creation. An interesting episode in the New Testament of a demon called Legion. And then demons in the New Testament, by the way, are always disembodied. In other words, they're always inhabiting humans. So that's why it connects with this Rephaim story I was telling you about. So in that story, remember what happens? The demon comes out, speaks to Jesus, identifies Jesus. Don't send us into the pit. And then Jesus sends them into a bunch of pigs, and the pigs go where? To the water, and they drown themselves. So that could be also a reference. And of course, in the book of Revelation, the supreme Jewish apocalyptic work, following on the heels of the book of Daniel, the sea, the ocean, the waters, is the home of the beast, demons, and Satan himself. And that's in Revelation 12. You have the raging chaotic sea itself will be destroyed, maybe because it represents current fallen system. So God will actually do away with the oceans. Now, is that literally? Is it just, again, a metaphor to say that simply all aspects of that chaotic, evil, demonic thing will be done away with? Maybe. So it could be a reference to the satanic power and death broken itself. And that's what it says actually in Revelation 8 and Revelation 20 and Revelation 21, that Satan and death itself will be broken. And just one last note, it's interesting that in ancient Arabic myth and Islamic theology, in their system, the seas are the home of the what's called jinns, or what we would know as genies. The genies are not so nice, by the way. Disney turned the genie into this nice creature, but genies are basically what the New Testament calls demons.